Tonight, a guilty verdict in a COVID court case. The father who abducted his daughter to prevent her from getting the vaccine.
The intent to carry out the act, and that this being the taking of the child from her mother, was where we directed our attention.
What's next for the man who took the law into his own hands?
Some gas is just pouring it on himself.
Shock and horror after a man set himself on fire outside Trump's criminal trial. Israel strikes back at Iran, stoking fears of a dangerous escalation. Plus, the snack that delayed a rescue to save a trapped orca calf. And Taylor Swift's surprise double drop. The megastar hits a high note after a major leap.
CTV National News with Heather Butts.
Good evening. We begin with breaking news from Newfoundland and Labrador. The town of Valley Goose Bay has declared a state of emergency as an uncontrolled fire spreads near the town and the Canadian Forces base nearby. The Mounties are warning of possible explosions as the fire edges closer to an area with explosive materials. Residents are being urged to stay a full kilometre away from the area, described as from the end of the airport to the docks. Efforts are underway to contain the fire. A man who didn't want his young child to get vaccinated for COVID-19 has been found guilty of abduction. The Saskatchewan father didn't return his 7-year-old daughter to the care of her mother, who had primary custody. The ordeal lasted months during the height of the pandemic. The 2-week trial ended quickly today. CTV's Alison Bamford reports.
2 weeks of testimony leading to a quick decision. Within 2.5 hours, the jury unanimously found Michael Jackson guilty of abducting his daughter in violation of a custody order.
I'm grateful that the mother and child affected by this have some sense of closure in terms of what's happening.
The case dates back to the pandemic, when Jackson failed to return his then 7-year-old daughter to her mother in November 2021. The young girl didn't see her mom until February, after police located the father-daughter pair 1,600 kilometers from home. The 55-year-old represented himself during the 2-week trial, even taking the stand to present his own evidence. In his closing arguments, Jackson doubled down on his main point. The singular reason for taking her was to be her father, he said, and to protect her from the imminent, irreparable, and irreversible harm of the COVID-19 vaccine. Jackson's motive was clear, but the judge warned the 12-person jury to pay close attention to the facts. What matters is what they did, not the reasons for why they did it, she said.
You can't have, the motive to do A without the intent to do B. And really, that was the crux of the Crown argument.
Jackson hurried out of the courtroom following the verdict, taking no time to speak with media. He remains out on bail for now, but will be back in front of a judge for sentencing at a later date, with a wide range of potential outcomes, anywhere from a conditional discharge to several years in custody. Heather?
And we'll watch for that sentencing. Alison, thanks. A jury is still deciding the fate of a man on trial for the 2021 murder of a Toronto police officer. Umar Zamir has pleaded not guilty of running over Jeffrey Northrup in a parking garage. The defense argues Zamir didn't know Northrup, who was in plain clothes, was an officer. So when the constable approached his car, he was scared. He was being robbed and hit the gas. A disturbing scene outside a Manhattan courthouse where jury selection was underway for Donald Trump's criminal trial. A man from Florida set himself on fire in a nearby park. And we need to warn you, this story is graphic. The man walked into the park in full view of cameras and threw some pamphlets into the air. Police say the papers contained conspiracy theories. Then he got out a canister and doused himself in something flammable. Before anyone could stop him, he lit himself on fire.
Everyone was screaming. There were some frantic moments as police looked for a fire extinguisher.
Police managed to extinguish the flames and rush the man to a burn unit in critical condition. Police say they see no connection between the trial and what unfolded outside.
We do not believe he is, this was targeting any particular person or any particular group. We just, right now, label it as a sort of a conspiracy theorist, and we're going from there.
Inside the court, a full jury was sworn in for Trump's hush money trial, 12 jurors and 6 alternates. So opening statements can start Monday. The former U.S. president is accused of falsifying financial records, covering up a payment to a porn star to hide their affair. He's pleaded not guilty. The world is watching closely after Israel fired back at Iran in the latest exchange between the two bitter enemies. While experts say it's meant to send a message to Tehran, both sides appear to be downplaying the incident. CTV's Adrian Gobriel reports.
A flash high in the sky as Iran is put on notice.
That is a clear message to the Iranian regime that Israel can operate anywhere, anytime.
The entire region has been traversing a tightrope following Saturday's first ever direct attack by Iran inside Israel. U.S. officials reporting that last night, Israel carried out an airstrike deep inside the Islamic Republic. This video posted online shows Iran's air defense system in action. Iranian officials claiming to have intercepted 3 drones.
Israel had to respond in some way, and their war cabinet was clear on this.
The so-called attack focused on the central Iranian city of Isfahan, home to a large airbase as well as part of Iran's nuclear program.
Everything needs to be done to prevent further escalation in the region.
Attending the G7 ministers' meeting in Italy, Secretary of State Antony Blinken confirmed the U.S. did not take part in the reported airstrikes inside Iran.
Our focus has been on, of course, making sure that Israel can effectively defend itself, but also de-escalating tensions, avoiding conflict.
Israel has yet to comment on the reported military operation, and Iran has not identified the source of the strike. Some analysts believe we may actually be witnessing the end of the recent direct exchanges between the two historic enemies.
What we're seeing here, hopefully, is the reestablishment of the status quo antebellum, if you will, the status quo before all of this activity started, and that we can return to the shadow war that Israel and Iran have been conducting for decades.
While pledging to support Israel's right to defend itself, the U.S. today taking a firm stance, placing sanctions on 2 Israeli organizations believed to be fundraising for violent extremist settlers in the West Bank. Adrian Gobriel, CTV News, Toronto.
A Canadian aid worker killed by an Israeli drone strike in Gaza was laid to rest today. A procession made its way to Jacob Flickinger's hometown of St. Georges, Quebec. The father, a military veteran, was among 7 staff of World Central Kitchen who died earlier this month when Israel's military says it mistook them for Hamas militants. As Nova Scotians marked 4 years since a man carried out Canada's worst mass shooting, residents near Truro were on edge once again as police put out an alert telling them to shelter in place.
A firearm was seized, although we didn't have a firearm at the time of the arrest. My understanding, there's a firearm that was seized, and also a knife was recovered by police dog services.
RCMP responded to a report of a dangerous man on foot with a firearm in the Bible Hill area. 20 minutes into a search, a suspect was found and taken into custody. 22 people were killed in the mass shooting back in 2020. Human rights groups are criticizing Ottawa for being unprepared to deal with high-risk detainees who've made their way to this country. Canada's Border Service Agency is scrambling to find space to hold them. CTV's Judy Trin has more.
The Liberal government wants to move a very small number of high-risk immigration detainees into federal prisons because the CBSA is not ready to take them. It's a policy change buried near the end of this year's 416-page budget. Human rights groups say the foreign nationals should not be imprisoned with criminals, even if they've been convicted.
If they were a citizen, they won't then have to serve another sentence or be detained again. And so, I think we have to ask, what is it about non-citizens that justifies this different treatment?
High-risk individuals are currently held in provincial jails, but those contracts end in June. The CBSA says renovations to improve security at its centers won't be done in time.
It really is, and I hear
the union says staff may have to release some detainees.
That even people who do the arrests and execute warrants and such, will they still be doing that as they were doing it before if you have nowhere to put someone who you've detained?
Currently, there are about 47 high-risk individuals in provincial jails, 195 in CBSA centers. Nearly 13,000 others are in the community and monitored through devices like GPS ankle bracelets.
Assaulting a peace officer, unlawful confinement, manslaughter.
CTV News showed an immigration lawyer profiles of some high-risk detainees. The federal government has known for years provincial contracts were ending. Warren Creech says they should have been better prepared.
What we want to see is strong leadership in our government that are doing things according to the rule of law, that are reasonable, and that people's rights are protected.
High-risk detainees are often facing deportation, but it's a process that could take months, even years. They can't be deported to war zones, and they can't be deported to countries where they could face torture or be killed by authorities. Heather.
CTV's Judy Trin in Ottawa. 2 United Airlines pilots have been suspended after flying a Major League Baseball team from Denver to Toronto. It comes after video surfaced during the Colorado Rockies charter flight.
We'll land the plane tonight.
The video from inside the cockpit showed hitting coach Hensley Mullins in the pilot seat at cruising altitude, a violation of strict federal regulations. Mullins has deleted the video from social media. United Airlines said it was deeply disturbed. The FAA is investigating. Police near Toronto have shared dramatic new video of a violent carjacking attempt. Suspects can be seen trying to take an SUV from a couple in a parking lot earlier this month. After a struggle, they give up and flee in a getaway car, also believed to be stolen. A week later, police tracked down that white Acura and the suspects. Using flashbangs, officers boxed in the vehicle. A chase followed and 3 teenagers were taken into custody. Police say there may be other suspects linked to this criminal network. Legal questions are being raised after some Tim Hortons customers were told they had won a boat worth nearly $60,000, except they hadn't. The coffee giant blamed it on a technical error, but it's getting roasted by unhappy customers. CTV's Garrett Berry explains.
And I was like, no way.
Inboxes across the country filled up an emailed recap of what Tim's customers had won during the Roll Up the Rim promotion. But many were surprised when the email congratulated them for having won a $60,000 boat.
I phoned my mom, I phoned my husband, my kids and friends, and I'm saying, I won a boat, I won a boat.
Those emails went out Wednesday afternoon and were corrected a few hours later, but not before the would-be winners had told their friends and family about the prize.
Just from the range of emotion from being up here to down here within an hour was soul-crushing.
Tim Hortons blames technical errors and said customers who had won prizes would have been told immediately, not in a recap email. It's not clear how many people are affected, but many are still frustrated. Almost 2,000 customers have now joined a Facebook group complaining about their treatment and looking for recourse. Some say that $60,000 would have gone far.
I'm upset about it. It's a life-changing opportunity, prize to win, and I could have really either used the prize money or the boat.
It's not the first time that something like this has happened. The coffee chain made a similar mistake last year when it told some customers they had won a $10,000 prepaid credit card.
Tim Hortons told CTV in a statement that it apologized for the frustration and for not living up to its high standards.
Toronto lawyer Nick Poon got an erroneous email too. He said taking Tim's to court might be a tall task, even after you've navigated all the fine print.
The costs of litigation and the time involved and the stress and anxiety involved in being involved in litigation. The other factor is Tim Hortons likely has greater resources than any individual customer.
But he says laws are different in different provinces, so if you really want to investigate your legal options, you should speak with a lawyer yourself. Garrett Berry, CTV News, St. John's.
Coming up, a baby whale's big meal.
We got it!
Building strength and buying time for the next step in a rescue mission. Plus, swift reaction to the surprise double album. Word tonight of a historic ruling in BC, and at the center of it all, a golden retriever.
After all, companion animals are family.
Stella was thrown into a custody battle after a couple broke up. A judge ruled the 4-year-old will split time evenly between the two people. This is the first such decision after a BC law recognized pets as family members and not property. A dramatic turn of events off the coast of British Columbia, hours before a complex rescue to save a stranded and orphaned orca. It was called off because for the first time in weeks, the whale finally enjoyed a good meal, offering another possible solution out of the lagoon. CTV's Andrew Johnson has the latest.
It's an incredible sight, leading to a big sigh of relief.
I think it was joy, really. I think the joy of the meal was really, what she needed.
After trying for weeks, members of the Ahadisat First Nation successfully feed 40 pounds of seal meat to the young orca they've named Quisaheus, or Brave Little Hunter.
It brings us a little bit more comfort for sure.
Especially after what research teams noticed earlier this week, a change in the orphaned whale.
The animal was showing a little bit of a subtle change by the blowhole, a little bit of a depression, which indicates that there may be some changes in body conditions.
Given that concerning discovery, a second attempt to rescue the orca and reunite her with her family was set to go ahead today. Now it's been called off. If the whale is eating, there is less urgency, and that meat could be used as bait, avoiding a complex rescue.
Using as an attractant to move the animal within the lagoon, possibly out of the lagoon.
The saga that began when the young orca's mother died nearby has now stretched close to a month. The Ahadisat Nation has launched a GoFundMe to help cover the costs involved. Today, the Prime Minister was asked about the federal contribution.
I think we're all following this story attentively. It is heartbreaking, and we're all worried.
Where does all of this leave next steps? Well, some of the people who were going to be involved in the rescue today have been sent home. We're leaving too. For now, while the experts who remain work with the First Nation on exploring using prey as a lure, at least while the whale remains healthy. If she begins to decline again, that could all change. Andrew Johnson, CTV News, Zabalis, BC.
Still ahead, Swifties get quite a surprise. The much-anticipated album is out as superfans decode what Taylor's really singing about. The world's biggest election kicked off today as India votes to choose its next government. Almost 1 billion people, that's roughly 25 times the population of Canada, are eligible to vote. This is the first of 7 phases in a massive logistical exercise. Prime Minister Narendra Modi and his Hindu Nationalist Party are hoping for a historic third term. Prince Harry, 5th in line to the British throne, has confirmed he is now a U.S. resident. The Duke of Sussex left his royal duties and moved to California with his American wife, Meghan Markle, 4 years ago. The change in his residency was revealed in a British filing on Wednesday, just a day before his brother, Prince William, returned to royal duties since Princess Kate's cancer announcement. Swifties are celebrating today with a highly anticipated album release, and it came with a surprise. Her 11th studio album, living up to the hype for fans who waited patiently until midnight for what became a double release with 15 extra songs. Swift posting to social media, "I'd written so much tortured poetry in the past 2 years and wanted to share it all with you. The story isn't mine anymore, it's all yours."
It was very self-written. It was about her own life, and I really appreciate it. And I think that people who are very invested in who Taylor is and what she brings to the table and what she's experienced really appreciate the album.
Many of the songs focus on Swift's love life and heartbreak over the last year. The album actually leaked a day early, causing a frenzy online. After the break, the postseason is here. Fans gear up for the opening round playoff series. It's the eve of the Stanley Cup playoffs. Hockey's biggest prize is once again up for grabs. 4 of the 7 Canadian teams will be in action, including the Toronto Maple Leafs versus the Boston Bruins. A classic matchup that often ends in heartbreak for Leafs Nation. But as CTV's Mike Walker explains, this year they're hoping to rewrite history.
The final touches are being made for the tailgate party at Maple Leaf Square as Leaf fans stock up on merchandise on the eve of Game 1 against the Boston Bruins.
Boston's going to underestimate Toronto, and I think Toronto has got a team built for the playoffs this year.
I think our team is a lot stronger, a lot grittier, and I think we have a good chance.
Leafs Nation optimistic but also nervous.
A 7th game win against Toronto.
The Bruins have won 6 straight playoff series against Toronto.
Another heartbreak in Boston,
including that epic Game 7 collapse in 2013.
It's going to be a tough matchup. You know, Boston, they're good.
I think it's a different season. Some good new additions on the team. Again, anything can happen.
The square is quiet today, but tomorrow thousands will gather here to watch the series opener in Boston on the big screen outside Scotiabank Arena. Teresa watches every game in the square, hoping for a victory celebration.
What do you enjoy about it?
Atmosphere. People coming and enjoying.
In order to attend the tailgate parties, you must register on the Leafs app for free passes.
Each individual is going to get access to 2 passes that are non-transferable. Gates will open 2 hours before puck drop.
New this year are Go Leafs Go transit trains along the lakeshore lines, an interactive passion meter plus.
If you want to bring an article of clothing from home and turn it into a one-of-a-kind Leafs merchandise, we have something called Make It Merch, which is a new pop-up this year.
As excitement builds here, the Leafs practicing in Boston this afternoon, preparing to go against a tough Bruins team that won all 4 regular season games.
Both 2 good teams, and I'm sure they're going to prepare just like we are for them, and looking forward to the challenge. It's going to be a lot of fun.
We're equipped with lots of different options, lots of depth scoring, lots of competitiveness and grit, physicality and toughness, and just excited to get going.
Former captain and legend Wendell Clark says this roster has what it takes to prevail.
Our best players are at the right age. They're not rookies, they're not old, and this is their time.
Excitement building as the quest for the Cup begins.
6 games, Toronto.
With Toronto looking to win its first playoff series against the Bruins since 1959. Mike Walker, CTV News.
That's our newscast for this Friday night. I'm Heather Butts. For all of us at CTV National News, thank you for watching. Good night, and I'll see you again tomorrow.